Hello and welcome back to Rockets and Coffee. I'm here with Dr. James Lambert again. Welcome back to the podcast. So there's been all sorts of things that have happened since we last spoke. Can you run me through what's been going on?
So much going on here. Obviously, huge announcement of our Sunbird project. I suppose that was kind of the big headline grabbing news. Obviously, you can also see in the background a huge amount of heavy metal work continues here.
Our big metal tubes that we've got in the background. Do you mind running us through what they are?
Yeah, of course. These are our two, chamber 1 and chamber 2, our new testing facility for our 5 kilowatt Mars Ranger project. And we are deep into the metalworking welding phase of building our new chambers. This one behind us is going to be used for figuring out the actual performance envelope of our new engine. Chamber 2 is a little bit further down the road. It's going to be used for flight qualification of our engines before they fly.
Yeah. So if you can hear any clanging or anything going on, this is a live facility and they are literally working on the vacuum chambers as we speak. So tell me a bit more about the Sunbird announcement.
Yeah. So Sunbird is Pulsar's concept for a interplanetary migratory transfer vehicle. So you may have come across the idea of a transfer vehicle in space. The idea is you launch into one orbit, but that's not the orbit you want to go to. You want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So another spacecraft comes along and pulls you out to wherever it is you're going, whether that's a higher orbit or a different planet. Now, Sunbird takes that concept and just runs with it.
Yeah.
So the key idea to stay fixed on is that the limiting factor of everything you do in space is your propulsion technology.
Yeah.
The better your propulsion technology, the more you can do, the further you can go, and the faster you can get there. So Sunbird is a fusion-powered transfer vehicle. This will get us from Earth to Mars in 3 months reliably, regardless of where those planets are in their orbits. The key is to get where you're going fast.
Yeah. So to answer some of our questions in our YouTube comments, can you tell me a little bit about why there is this myth around us not having fusion and therefore the Sunbird not being possible?
Well, I mean, fusion's been a dominant concept in not just scientific research, but also science news for a very long time. Like most major governments have had fusion projects going on for decades and decades. The United States, the UK, China, the ITER project in the south of France. Everyone's used to fusion projects being around and being kind of slow.
Yeah.
The joke is, fusion is the power of the future, and it always will be.
Yeah.
To some degree, fusion is a little bit of a victim of some of its past failings. Some projects have been incredibly slow, very over budget, and sure, everyone's also just keen for them to work. We really want them to work because it's an amazing project. But the important thing to remember is fusion is a very well understood bit of science, right? The nuclear physics of fusion is not in dispute anywhere.
Yeah.
We all simply agree that, sure, it's quite a tough engineering challenge, but it is an engineering challenge, not a science challenge.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing in the space sector, which is really exciting, is a shift of attitude around fusion.
Yeah.
So normally people approach fusion as a energy source. In that case, you're looking at big power stations, lots of very careful planning because it's going to be built next to where people live.
Yeah.
But when it comes to space propulsion, all of the calculations change. We're looking at much smaller, simpler reactors that can be incredibly powerful and really transform how we move in space.
So one of our comments was, we don't have fusion reactors on Earth, so surely it's going to be even harder to build one in space. Can you explain the difference between fusion for energy versus fusion for propulsion?
Yeah, it's actually a really, really, really good question. Because in general, if someone said, hey, you can't build this on Earth, what makes you think?
Space?
You're right. Usually it gets way more difficult just if you want to put something in space, right? But fusion's really different. The reactors we're looking at for space propulsion are completely different reactor designs to the ones we would use on Earth for power. So people watching this channel are probably plenty nerdy enough to know about things like tokamaks and maybe stellarators, right? These are the big headline designs for fusion power stations.
Yeah.
They are of no use as space propulsion concepts. They are not relevant to what we're doing.
Yeah.
The reason for that is if you can picture a stellarator or a tokamak, they are kind of donut shaped.
It's a loop.
It's a loop, right? And we want to create propulsion.
Yeah.
The gases need to go out the end.
Yeah.
Right? So we need a linear device. And the fusion engineering of linear devices is quite a bit simpler. You can get away with weaker magnets.
Yeah.
And if any of our viewers closely track the development of fusion projects for land-based power, they know that magnets are sometimes a limiting factor. We can't build the magnet strong enough.
Yeah.
Or just, we didn't leave enough in the budget for the bigger magnets that we need, right? So again, the space-based propulsion concepts use weaker magnets. This makes our lives a lot easier.
Yeah.
Also, fusion takes place in a vacuum. Space is already a vacuum.
Yeah.
So straight away, evacuating the chamber, pumping all that air out so you can put your fuel in, is done for you for free.
Yeah. And we don't have to capture anything to turn it into energy, right? Because it's just straight out the back.
Straight out the back, exactly. So a fusion power station would have a turbine, like a conventional power station, to take all that heat, turn it into electricity. Whereas a fusion propulsion concept, we just want the propulsion. And I mean, we could then get fancy and say, hey, let's also capture some of that energy for electricity.
Yeah.
But it's a bolt-on. If you decide you don't want that, you don't have to have it.
It's a bolt-on.
Yeah.
We'll add it to the Fusion subscription.
Put it into the shopping list, yeah.
So talking about advancements in fusion, we recently had a world record with the Wendelstein. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'd love to be involved in that project, but of course that's theirs, not ours. But these guys have been building the most incredible device over in Germany. It's a stellarator. If you look at these things, they look almost like a piece of alien technology. They're just stunningly beautiful. But they've been kind of unexplored in relationship to tokamaks, which have really seen the bulk of fusion research over the last 50 years or so.
Sure.
So it's really exciting to see a stellarator kind of really taking the lead and pushing the envelope in fusion.
Yeah.
So these guys have just seen one of their longest plasma pulses, putting as much energy as they can into that plasma, which is what you have to do to figure out how do we turn this thing into a power station. Power stations have to run all the time. So really developing those longer pulses is critical to where they're going. So I couldn't be happier for them.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't feed into our work on propulsion, unfortunately. But I will say that a lot of the great tech that's being developed for fusion energy, we're seeing at the Wendelstein, we're seeing at ITER, we're seeing in East, in China. All of these wonderful technical innovations are there for the taking when you start putting fusion in space. So for example, the supply chain, simply where do you buy your materials from?
Yeah.
These answers are being solved because of the land-based fusion industry, which is great.
So with the Wendelstein holding the world record for the longest, is it plasma impulse? Is that what we call it?
I think it's a record for their type of design.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a world record for, in general, people have run slightly longer pulses, but on a different type of reactor. That's my understanding.
I see. So for those who say we don't have fusion, that is a fusion reaction.
It is, and we've been doing fusion reactions not just in the Wendelstein, but at JET and MAST here in the UK, at NIF in the US, at EAST in China. It's a flourishing project, and we're coming in and saying we want to take a lot of these great ideas, apply them to a new reactor concept, and do it in space.
Yeah. So just because we don't have fusion in our homes doesn't mean it can't power our rockets.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So AI is a super hot topic at the moment, as we know. How do you think AI will help with the advancements of fusion?
Yeah, I think in a few really interesting ways that are just beginning to play out now. I mean, one is that fusion comes down to plasma physics. Plasma physics is notoriously really complicated. Yeah, I mean, even though we have all the laws of physics that describe a plasma, getting a computer to actually simulate them is staggeringly difficult.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that if you make the right use of AI, you can actually get some quite accurate plasma codes that run in a fraction of the time of a conventional plasma physics simulation. So super exciting. You actually, for the first time, can simulate quite accurately. I'm saying quite accurately, like not perfectly, but quite accurately, what your reactor is going to do. And the exciting thing there is that once you can do that, you can then iterate your design. So you can say, okay, well, this simulation showed that didn't behave quite how we wanted it. AI, tell us.
What should we do?
What should we do? ChatGPT, you know. And the exciting thing there is it's not just, it goes from being a tool that a scientist can wield to this kind of closed loop iteration where you actually can simulate and redesign in an almost autonomous process. So hopefully we're going to see these reactors take a big leap forward instead of having to actually make them over a decade, test them, figure out they're not quite what you want, and then spend another decade building another one. Hopefully you can close that loop and reduce it down to months, years.
So Steve Cowley says that AI could fast track fusion. What's your opinion on how AI will help that fast track?
Yeah, I think when you're right, absolutely. AI is going to do some really cool things for us when it comes to accurately simulating plasma physics or informing the design of the next generation of fusion reactors. So if we can get both of those processes going in an autonomous loop, you're really going to see an accelerated development of fusion technology. Super exciting.
So talking about solving things with AI, you know, in Interstellar when they're trying to fix like the equation so they can get off of Earth, do you reckon ChatGPT could give us that answer quicker?
Or just hammer it out.
Yeah.
Say, ChatGPT, help me out with this general relativity.
Yeah, we're trying to leave Earth, everyone's dying, there's no food. Solve the equation for me.
I don't know. I mean, I think when you look at harnessing AI to solve really hard maths, if it can do it, it's usually doing it by not solving the maths the way a human would do it. It's normally just kind of making ridiculously good educated guesses. And hopefully turning out to be right more often than I would be if I was trying to give an educated guess. So it's not playing by the same rules. It's just getting really lucky. Because it's been trained to be lucky.
So we still need Murph in Interstellar to
always need
Murph. We need Matthew McConaughey in a different dimension.
Otherwise we are lost.
So how do you think AI will help you test and iterate the Sunbird and maybe get to like an end result faster?
So the key is that you don't start cutting metal until you've gone through a lot of rounds of iterative design. So the idea here is we can harness AI because it's getting better at solving plasma physics and it's getting good at improving the design of fusion reactors as well. And so what we want is a closed loop process where we can come up with a design, simulate it, figure out what we don't like, and improve the design. And once we've got that stage so that we can take that to an in-orbit demonstration, that's when we start cutting metal and actually putting things in orbit.
So faster propulsion means faster builds in space. How could the Sunbird help with that?
Sure. So think about really ambitious space projects that we want to put into action. Let's suppose we wanted to put a space station like the ISS, but in orbit around Mars. You've got to get hundreds, thousands of tons of equipment and people from Earth to Mars fast. And it needs to be fast for a bunch of reasons. One is there's people on board. And so it's super important that they can get there quickly. You're traveling through radiation belts, for example, so they can't be spending too long in space. But also speed is vital because it controls costs. If you can complete the project faster, you can control your costs better. But I think the most exciting thing about this concept, the Sunbird project, is that of all technologies that you put into space, propulsion is the one that actually determines the entire scale of the space industry. If you deliver a more powerful propulsion system, all of a sudden, what is the space industry has just grown. Right? And so we're going to see all kinds of imaginative uses for Sunbird that we haven't even imagined now. I mean, look what's happened to the space industry in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, it would have been unthinkable to have all the kind of fascinating startups you have popping up now. They want to do asteroid mining. They want to do Earth observation to rival meteorological satellites. None of these things would have even been thought of if SpaceX hadn't managed to drop the cost to launch, right? That's propulsion expanding the industry. And that's what Sunbird is doing in space.
So what's the demand for a product like the Sunbird?
Okay, so take any of the big science projects or any of the big exploration projects you can think of. Sunbird halves the cost.
Yeah.
Right? You can do them faster, you can do them cheaper, you can do more of them.
Yeah.
You can get to where you're going in space faster than anyone else can. So whether the project is science, whether the project is military, or something else, you are a more capable actor in space if you're flying on a Sunbird.
Yeah. How do you feel about it being compared to a space Uber?
A space Uber, love it, yes.
Do you think we're headed towards a space fusion powered highway between planets?
Well, that's kind of what the Sunbird builds, right? Like, I think of Sunbird not as a spacecraft, but as a space infrastructure.
Yeah.
The Sunbird is simply the means to get from Earth to Mars or the moon, wherever it is you're going, quickly and easily, because that Sunbird infrastructure is there. It's not just that you have one Sunbird spacecraft, you have a whole fleet of them in orbit around both planets, and you can hop on one, fly over where you're going, and you know that when you get there, there'll be one fueled up ready to take you back.
How does the Sunbird refuel if it's, for example, at Mars?
Cool. So the concept is that you have an in-orbit refueling platform. And that platform is going to harvest sunlight through solar arrays and store the nuclear fuel necessary to run the Sunbird. And I think if you look at our super cool video, which you had more than a small hand in building, when you see that Sunbird dock, you'll see a little charging light appear, and it's really similar to, like, you know, if you're charging your battery operated drill, you click the battery in, and the light goes red, and then after a little while it goes amber and then green, and then you're ready to fly. And that's why I think about it as a space infrastructure project rather than simply a spacecraft.
Yeah. So do you think the Sunbird is the key to things like asteroid mining or like taking humans to Mars?
Yeah, big time, because it's all about completing these what we call really high delta V missions, these missions that require a huge amount of propulsion to get you from A to B in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about big ambitious propulsion projects like Sunbird is they enable all kinds of new sources of demand, applications that we haven't thought of yet, because they are unthinkable without a better propulsion system.
So let's talk Delta V.
Yeah.
Can you take me through how Delta V affects planning for big missions?
That's a fantastic question. It's basically the core input. If a customer comes to us and says, guys, I've got a mission and I want you to get me there, pretty much our first question is, what's your Delta V? Because that tells us what kind of propulsion technology you need, how much propellant you need, and how much time you're going to need as well.
So how does that calculation sort of come together? Is it dependent on their payload?
It's dependent on a bunch of things, but mainly they're going to tell us things like the mass of their spacecraft, how quickly they want to get from A to B, what A to B is. And once we have that information, we can figure out, okay, well, in that case, you're going to need to apply this amount of force to your spacecraft, courtesy of Pulsar, and for this amount of time. And that gives you your Delta V.
So as well as Delta V, let's talk about the carbon saving of the Sunbird. As it's in space, obviously we are removing that launch capability. It just needs to be sent up once. What's the kind of carbon saving of that?
Yeah, right. Well, the dream is that our customers can launch their payloads into a lower Earth orbit and get scooped up by Sunbird and taken to wherever it is they need to go, rather than having to launch themselves into a much higher orbit and take care of all of their transfer costs. You know, like if you wanted to get to Mars, currently you have to launch yourself into orbit, then change orbit to get out to Mars, and it's all being done by burning fossil fuels. We want that to be done by fusion.
So what would you say to the people in our YouTube comments that say this just can't be done?
I mean, if you look at what we do today, look at SpaceX catching Starship on a pair of metal chopsticks, right? You would, if you'd said to people even 10 years ago, oh yeah, we're going to build a spacecraft the height of a skyscraper and catch
and we're going to catch it.
And we're going to catch it on some metal chopsticks, people would have said, I don't think you are. But they've done it. And so I would say to anyone who's skeptical of what we're doing, be skeptical if you want.
Yeah.
But judge us by the results we get.
Yeah. And I don't think it's as hard as people think. I mean, we have the science, we have fusion,
Yeah.
and it's just a case of combining that with an absolutely massive Sunbird.
I agree, and I think so often engineering fails through a lack of ambition sometimes. It's very, very easy to play it safe.
Yeah.
And say, look, everyone agrees this is possible, so I'll stick to it within this narrow window. But what we have realized is that the experts still agree this is possible too.
Yeah.
So why not go for the big ambitious project?
Yeah, for sure. The fun one.
Yeah.
How will the Sunbird affect future plans for things like colonizing Mars?
Right. So I think the way I think about it is having a Sunbird system operating between Earth and Mars. It's like building a road
Yeah.
between the Earth and Mars.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to have a lot easier time building stuff on Mars if there's a road to it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I think is going to start changing people's calculations.
Yeah.
So, for example, maybe you want to build a space station orbiting Mars. Okay. But if Sunbird is active, you can now think about quadrupling the size of your space
Yeah.
station, right? You can think about building not just a space station, but how about an internet constellation
Yeah.
like Starlink
Yeah.
around Mars as well? You'll probably want internet access
Yeah.
for your own Mars internet.
Netflix just outside of Mars.
Yes, please.
So, I mean, also they can go back and forth, right? So, like, bringing resources to an ISS-style station outside of Mars then becomes a possibility for people to live aboard that.
Absolutely right. You'll be transferring building materials and people and all kinds of other things as well. You can do more of it faster if you have a road to Mars
Yeah.
or a road to wherever it is.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we were in the movie Martian,
Yeah.
that whole film would be over in 4 minutes.
Boring film. Yeah.
Terrible. They
Yeah.
just hop on a Sunbird, they've got him his resources, and they bring him back home.
Bring the botanist back. Yeah,
that's it.
It's fine.
So what are the next steps for the Sunbird? What are you most excited for?
Well, the thing that really I find super exciting is that so far, no one has ever carried out any kind of fusion reaction in space. There's simply never been a controlled fusion reaction on board a spacecraft.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the first in-orbit demonstration as part of our Sunbird program. It's going to be a fusion reaction
Awesome.
in orbit for the first time. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So when should we keep our eyes peeled?
Aiming for 2027 is
Wow.
our faster IOD. Yeah,
Cool.
super exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of that work is going alongside the development of our Hall effect thruster projects
Yeah.
behind us.
So what will we be seeing from Pulsar over the next couple of months?
Well, we've got our first Pulsar Summit happening this month in
Yeah.
Switzerland. Super exciting. It's the first time we're running it. It's a charity event in support of injured animals.
Yeah.
And we're getting a bunch of really fascinating people into the mountains in Switzerland. We're going to have some interesting talks, probably some good wine,
Yeah.
and hope to raise a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And as always, like, follow, and subscribe for more. And we will see you next time.